What's up, y'all? What's up? Where everybody up to? Okay. Yeah. Let some more people get in here. We got two. Lord Brewer, what's up, man? Jeff Perry, what's up? How everybody doing? Lord, what you been up to? Jeff, what's going on? Nick Baker, what's going on, bro? Everybody good? Hey y'all keep me informed on that Super Bowl score. I'm pulling for Tampa Bay. Y'all let me know what Brady doing now. Lord Brewer, y'all let me know what's up. Oh, Floyd, you building the Muggy project. Well, all right, y'all. I'm gonna bring Rex on in here, man, and we're gonna get started. And like I said, y'all, just he a good man and hardworking man. And like I said, he love Nitro, he love RC period. So I'm gonna bring him on in and let y'all get to know him. Rex, what's up, bro?
Hi, how you doing?
Everything good?
Yeah. Everything's pretty good today.
That's what's up, man. Like I said, but yeah, man, this is, like I said, I call this I know you're a family man, and this is my Nitro family, and we just want to just sit down, have a talk and chat with you. Like I said, just laid back talking chat. We're gonna talk about RC and just how you got involved and stuff like that. And like I say, I don't call them my followers, man. I call them my Nitro family. Like I said, it's not just Nitro. It's electric guys in here too, and it's guys that run fifth scale in here. It's guys that does Nitro, on road, off road. So it's a good little mix, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so But yeah, bro, like I said, I just want to know, just tell everybody where you're from, Rex, and yeah, let everybody know where you're from.
Well, I grew up in Rochester, Minnesota, and right now I just live 30 miles away north of there, towards Minneapolis from there, and yeah.
Okay.
Live in a small town of only 1,000 people, so yeah. It is actually nice. I like that. I live on a dead end street. It's quiet and stuff. So.
Okay, so you can get out there and do pretty much what you want to do,
Yeah, yeah. And we actually had a track in the backyard at one time. We got just over an acre of land, so we had a track that we ran mostly electric on it, but because it was like a little smaller, 10 scale size, but it was fun to have. And Kendall, my son, did pretty well. He learned quite a bit with having that track there and running every day on it. So.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Hey, yeah, and I'm gonna let y'all know. Well, Rex is not just a RC engine model now. Rex is into the drones too. Rex, how'd you get into the drones? The drones and stuff. How you get into the drones?
I think it was about 4 years ago. My son was TLR sponsored, so he was Horizon, and we could get pretty much anything through that contract. And so he got a good deal on it. He didn't get anything for free, but we got just one of the little indoor drones and flew it around, and then we both got them, and it was just a blast. I mean, it was the FPV part of it was just crazy, different than anything we've done. We've done RC for a long time, but putting the FPV goggles on was really quite an experience. And so I've been doing that kind of once in a while
Okay.
since then.
Yeah. So with those goggles on, is it hard? How is it to control? You know what I'm saying? With seeing it through the goggles and all that. How's it control those drones seeing it through the goggles? How's that?
I think when you're flying, it's easier because I've tried flying planes and they're going away from you or coming at you and stuff. It's totally different, just like a car when you first start. But when
Yeah.
you're in the goggles, you can just you're just like you're in it, going where you're going. So
Yeah.
it's actually easier, I think, flying. But if you were to, I have never hooked one up to a car. I do want to do that. I do want to kind of on my speed run car try and get a camera on there, but the vibration might not, let that happen. But
Yeah.
and see how that is. I think, with jumps and stuff, it just makes it way too difficult. You'd have to know how far to jump, and you wouldn't see the downside and all that. So I think off road would be really tricky, but on road and just down the street might be possible.
Yeah, because the jumps, had that incline. So just say if we was able to have that technology with the cars that have the goggles like the drone does, it'd be hard to see over the jumps, to see where you're jumping and how you line up for a jump. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
it'd be tough. But yeah, y'all, Rex is in these. He does the drone racing also, and he also. How did you come going from the drone racing? How did you get into RC, into the cars and stuff?
Car racing. I actually did race RC cars. God, it was a long time ago when the RC10 was out. A friend of mine that I worked with, they raced oval. Just in Rochester, there was a little track, and then he said, "Hey, you want to run my car today?" So I had very little experience in it. He turned down the steering on it and stuff, and I did pretty good. And then he kind of kept turning the steering up, and then it got a little bit too much for me. But that was my only experience. And then when my son Kendall was little, we'd go to the local oval track and watch once in a while, and he wanted to take his little Walmart toy and stuff. But then when he got old enough, he was mowing lawns for the neighbor, and then he got a Traxxas Rustler, bought it with his own money that he mowed lawns for and stuff. So he got into that, and then I want to say it was about a year later he got into racing it. With an electric Rustler. And if you look on my YouTube channel, way down in the bottom of racing videos, there's a couple from his, maybe his third or fourth event, just a little track near a hobby shop and stuff. And it was really well ran, and they didn't have timing, systems. They kind of just numbered the cars and counted them as they went by. But that's how we got into it. And then I eventually got a car and started racing myself. So,
what was your first car?
I would say it was a Duratrax Evader electric.
Okay, so it's like he had the Rustler, and you had did you still have the Evader? Then when he first got his first Rustler from working and stuff like that,
it was probably a year. Yeah, it was probably a year after he had the Traxxas Rustler that I got the Evader.
Yeah,
and then from there we were kind of low-C people for quite a while.
That's what's up, because a lot of the guys in here, they techno, a lot of them die-hard low-C fans. We got Mugen in here. A little bit of everything. Some Kyo shows. HBs, hot bodies, JQs. So, but yeah, man, like I said, we just a big melting pot, man. Everybody love it, and like I say, but yeah, a lot of the guys in here, they're low-C fans. So yeah. So how long? So low-C was your first race vehicle, pretty much?
Yeah, what was probably the truck? Maybe the XXX T Matt Francis, I think, might have been this first like real race car.
Okay, yeah. Was that the Nitro?
No, that was an electric truck. I would say, I think he started the first time he raced was 2001.
Okay.
And when I'm trying to think when he we got into Nitro about 2005 or so. Well, gas truck.
Yeah.
They ran that at that local track. So And then soon after that, within a year after that, we got an A scale.
Okay. Back up a little. Before y'all start racing, did y'all do a lot of bashing and stuff like that? That's how you started out.
Well, we had a gravel driveway, and he bought that car, and he'd run. I think he had it came with a wall charger or whatever, so he'd run that battery out pretty much every day, and then plug it in. And, and he'd set up jumps and cones in the driveway, and he did that for a year. And I really do think that's why he was a pretty good racer when he started racing, because he knew how to control it and had been doing it for a while. Where some people start racing, they buy a car and start racing that, just right away, and it kind of gets overwhelming, But if you just if you're a basher, the controls, how to run it. If you bash for years or whatever, it's pretty easy to start racing because you got the controls down, how to do it and stuff,
Yeah, that's what we were talking about in here, man. And I think I did an interview with another engine model named Chris Nunez. He's from out on the West Coast, and he was saying the same thing you said. He said a lot of times, a lot of the guys that how we learned, we really start develop our skills while we was bashing, before we got into racing. And he said, like, in that time when you get into racing, those bash skills are good for, like, when you get in difficult situations or getting problems out there on the track, you know how to, get out of them quick, just from knowing how to control your car through bashing, So it teaches you how to control your car when you get out of line, or you jump off the track, or you can find a quicker route back on the track, because from from the skills you learned through bashing. So it all relates. Yeah, it all relates. So but man. So okay, after y'all was bashing for a while, you got into to racing. So how did that come about, the racing?
I don't know how we heard about it, but maybe we had stopped at that hobby shop and saw that they had a track, and this one was a pretty low key place, a pretty nice place to start. And we had heard, there was this, like, really, more professional and stuff at the other track on the other side of town. So he started at this one. The soil was kind of like almost like a baseball diamond, that lime or whatever, that, the baseball field. And it was a real simple little track and stuff, small. And it was a good place to start for him,
Yeah.
And eventually we went across to the other indoor track, and it was Twin City Hobby and Raceway at the time, and we went there and practiced a few times. They had open Sundays practice and stuff, and went up with this friend of his. And
so so your son Kendall, was you more the mechanic then, and he drove, or did you race too, or did y'all swap up? How did y'all do it?
Yeah, I was kind of the mechanic for a few years. He got the good equipment, and I had the backup car basically and stuff, and he got the new tires, I got the old ones, stuff like that,
Yeah.
Then a few years later, he ended up being, if I needed, I didn't have to go learn the setup stuff myself. I just ask him, hey, what should I do here and stuff,
Yeah. So he really picked up on it real quick.
Yeah, much. And I had a nephew that a few years later had a nephew that raced. He lived with us for 4 years, and he really liked racing and stuff. But the difference in him was quite a bit, because Kendall, when he was young, he would read the magazines back to front till that next issue came out, and he would, I don't think internet was really widely used when he first started racing, but after the internet, he was always, 24/7 thinking about RC cars and racing and setups, and and he was looking at stuff. Where my nephew, he raced, and that next time, he wouldn't think about racing until the next time we went and raced. And I could see a difference, just like if baseball, any basketball, anything, if you live and breathe it and want to do it all the time, you're going to be a little bit better, I think,
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, man, so far as that, man, what what was the local tracks that y'all ran on when y'all was out racing and stuff like that? What was y'all local track y'all raced at?
Well, like I said, the first one was at a little Hobby Zone track. Then it was Twin City Hobby and Raceway, and then there was a track in Rochester, Minnesota, that I think we started racing gas and electric there. They would race, I think, once a week or maybe every couple of weeks. And that was kind of a loose off-road track, a little, bigger track and stuff. There was, I want to say it was, I don't remember which year, but they actually had a big race. And trying to remember, that was 2007 maybe. They had a big race and stuff. He won that, but he got second. Who was it? Trying to think that Associated guy that used to be the king or whatever. What are they? Saxton. Okay. They paid for Richard Saxton to come.
Okay.
And I think it was a 30-minute race, and my son was pretty new to Nitro. He'd been doing it a couple of years. I think he had the Jammin' Truggy at the time, so that was probably about the time that came out.
Right.
He had the Jammin' Truggy and buggy, and he ended up finishing about a half a lap down after 30 minutes to Richard Saxton. So some of the, he kind of took notice, and Saxton, he kind of shrugged it off. He's like, well, that Truggy's a lot better than my Thunder Tiger. At the time it probably was, but.
Right. Yeah. Cause Associated back then it actually was Thunder Tiger. And then I guess Associated bought it. And then that's when the name Associated came about. But before it was Thunder Tiger, right?
Yeah, I think Thunder Tiger bought Associated, so then they didn't have 8-scale stuff. Associated didn't have 8-scale stuff, so they ended up having they ran the Thunder Tiger stuff, for their 8-scale.
Okay, yeah, man. I gotta hold on. Let me pull this up. Maybe this might bring back a memory for you. Let me show you this right here. I'm gonna let you talk about this right here. Let me see here. Okay. Let me do it like this.
You're pretty good with this stuff. I don't have the slightest clue how to go in like this and bring in another thing like that and stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it, man. Let's see. I'm gonna play this right here. Let's see.
So this should be part of our Minnesota Nitro series.
Yeah, this is the Kendall's moving right here, man. Where were y'all at right here? You remember this race?
Yeah, this is up in North Branch, Minnesota. It's about an hour north of the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. It's our Minnesota Nitro Series race. We do it about once a month in the summer, 6 or 7 races. And it's a pretty good layout here.
Yeah.
They typically get 100 to 150 entries or so. Pretty good.
Okay.
Good amount of classes and stuff.
But he cutting up right here on fire right here. In the line smooth. What engines is he running right here? Do you remember?
I can't remember which year did that say. While he ran the Dynamite XPE, that's basically it was made by Alpha. Yeah. All the other Dynamite were made by SH, but this one, the Dynamite XPE was made by Alpha.
Okay.
And he ran the Argus for a couple years too. because I was selling Argus engines. Ran Go back in the day. Before the Dynamite, we ran Go engines.
So, well, you guys that usually don't have very many symptoms, might have to go through this one.
So we were a
Yeah.
pretty good team at the time. Like I raced, but I also raced different classes, or I didn't make the A main or whatever. So it's quite an advantage. It's quite an advantage having the same pit guy ever. You know, you're not going around looking for a pit guy, and knowing the tune of the engine, and I've came to be a pretty good tuner that way too. And so our stuff was always dialed, and the pits were good and all that. So that really does help. In our Minnesota Nitro Series, I think Kendall won the championship. I want to say 4 years in a row or something back a few years ago. So
yeah, he was legit racer, man. I see he was on fire, and like I said, he know how to hit all his break points and all that stuff. Good. Is he still racing, or what? What's he doing now? Is
he? He hasn't been taking it quite as serious. He's mountain biking stuff this year, and with COVID, I think it's been about a year since either one of us have really raced. He did some on-road electric racing indoors and did that a little bit. He's still associated sponsored right now, and and I think he kind of grew a little bit tired of the long weekend outdoor races.
Yeah.
Well, he gets off work at 5 o'clock on Friday, drives to the track, and gets home late Sunday, and just wants a little more of his weekend. So he kind of just more did the club races and indoor. There's a nice track up in it's east of St. Paul, Minnesota, but Dollar Hobbies, they do parting out of Mugans and different technos and different, maybe you've heard of them online and on eBay maybe too, but Dollar Hobbies built a track maybe a little over a year ago. So they it's a good indoor. They do on-road carpet and off-road carpet. So it's a nice place. So he was doing kind of the on-road and off-road for a while. But
okay. That's okay. Man, he got a lot of talent, man, and just try to keep him encouraged, keep him going at it. You know what I'm saying? Because he got the talent to be. You know what I'm saying? To make it for real. But
we never, when he was young and learning and going, I think if we would have traveled around and went to the nationals and went to a lot of big races and stuff, he probably would have, maybe been not a paid driver, but someone on the upper part of the teams and stuff. I think we did go to the nationals once in Chicago. They had in 2009 they had the nationals there at what was that place called? Anyways, they had the nationals there in 2009, and he did pretty well. I want to say it's hard to remember. Basically, the C main and Truggy. I think he bumped up to they go by eighths and quarters and stuff. So there's ladders. So there's 2 of them and stuff. But I remember in that race, he was ahead of Chad Bradley, and Bradley was kind of at the end of his career there and stuff. But he was ahead of him, and then he came in it was like a 10-minute race, so he came in for a pit stop, and he was running Kyosho at the time, and I went in to fuel him, and I pulled the tank lid, and the back screw of the tank pulled out, so the whole tank came up. So I couldn't get fuel in there. Luckily, someone standing there, just in pit lane, saw what happened and held it down with his finger, and we got it fueled. But he ended up still making the bump to the next main. So
that's what's up, man. That's awesome, man. Like I say, man, just keep him encouraged. I know he got probably family and all that other. Got other responsibilities and all that. So, man, he got the talent now. So just keep keep him encouraged if that's what he really want to do. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, he's 30 years old, 31 years old now. So he kind of does his own thing, and got me into mountain biking this year too. So
yeah. But man, you're all around. You're an athlete, Rex. You know that. You do drone, you do engine modding, you do RC, and you do your mountain biking and all that, bro. You're an athlete, man, for real. But yeah,
I don't know. Rex, I can't keep.
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep on one thing, I guess.
That's good though. That's keep from being bored. You know what I'm saying? So that's good. Yeah. But yeah. So Rex, what was the main reason that you got into engine modding? Like how did this idea came about in your head, and what made you do it?
Well, I'm kind of a do it yourselfer. What was it? I guess kind of go through a little bit.
Break it down.
I raced BMX in high school, and then I got into auto. I did a little bit of autocrossing. I had a Mazda RX-7, did that a little bit, and then I got into drag racing, and but I still got it. It's a '69 Nova. Did some street drag racing and stuff with it. And then I went to the strip with it a few times. It did pretty well. I think on nitrous it ran at like a 1053. And that was back 30 some years ago. So, and then
there's a few guys in here that got hot rods, so they know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I had a big block. It was a Nova, 69 Nova with a big block, 396. I built the engine myself. I pretty much, the only thing I've never really done on a car is the transmission, automatic transmissions and stuff. But so then I got into I pitted for a buddy that raced stock car, and then I ended up buying that car from him, just a bomber, and started racing that. And at the time they had a claim on the engine, so I did my own engine. About a $500 engine or whatever at the time, just a 350 or whatever. So I was kind of always been hands-on, with things. If just I can do it myself just as good as anybody else and stuff. So then I actually even built my own. I had a Nova stock car too. It was like a 77 Nova, and I built the roll cage in that too. So I built the engine, and then actually I'm a machinist, so I actually made the tubing bender to bend the tubing, and then welded the whole cage up. And I think about that now, how much work that was and stuff.
Yeah, man.
So I've always been that way.
Okay.
And then
my teammate in here, a guy here named Nitro Freak, he got a 70 Camaro, and it was originally, I think it was a 396. And he was just saying in the comments, he was saying that he did his like that. He built his up too. So, like I said, y'all got that in common, man. Like I said, a bunch of guys here that know how to build real cars, dragsters and stuff like that. And but yeah, go ahead.
I don't like to call them real cars. People say that all the time. Keenan says that stuff. Because RC cars are real too.
They're full scale.
Full size. Full size is a better word, because you don't want to, because RC cars are real. But I like cars, and I still got it, and I'm kind of a pack rat that way. If it's got sentimental value and stuff, so I just never get rid of it.
Dang, that's your baby. Because I got at my mom's house that I just came from, my dad had a 57 Chevy truck that is still it's in rough shape right now, but still I'm basically, when I get my money right and everything, I'm gonna pretty much rebuild it. And it already has I think he put before he passed, he put like a Buick 456 engine in it. It's got an engine in it right now, and it just needs some body work and some interior work done to it, and it'll be a bad beast. People come all the time trying to buy it from my mom, you know what I'm saying? But we tell her, hold on to it. We're gonna get it right. We're gonna get it right. So yeah, man. Yeah. But yeah. So yeah, bro. So go ahead.
When he started racing Nitro, of course I did some tuning on the engines, kind of learned tuning and stuff. And then I think I'd seen the magazines and stuff. They'd have some modified, internal pictures of a modified engine and stuff. and the engines were pretty simple back then. I think a lot of guys ran like the OSVG, and the porting on those were just really basic. So, and I started rebuilding engines, putting bearings in, and making my own tools and stuff for doing that. But and then I think I saw in one of the magazines, I saw one of the sleeve pinchers that was just like a C clamp, like a bike clamp or whatever. And I made one of those to pinch sleeves, and it was terrible. Like, I mean, it was not around, and this thing doesn't work. And so then one day I kind of just had a thought in my head of a different way to do it. So I started doing it. And then there was a local racer in our Minnesota series that was a machinist too, and he would pinch sleeves for guys. And I asked him how he did it, and we did it the same exact way. So no one really knows how I do it and stuff, but this other guy, he did it the same exact way as I did, because we both kind of thought the same way, as a machinist and stuff. But people always ask all the time how I pinch sleeves, but I've never shown a video of that and stuff. But I would eventually like to make a tool and sell it, but some of the parts going into it are pretty expensive, so I always kind of shied away from it. But so I got into rebuilding, and just kind of got into rebuilding and modifying and stuff. And when I first started modifying, I just did like everybody else and did some cuts on the sleeve, and kind of mimicked what the faster engines were, and some of the just cuts on the sleeve. I didn't really do any timing and stuff.
Okay. So, you got your business going and got everything established now. So tell the people, what all services do you offer?
I would say that my biggest part of my business is engine rebuilding. Just send me the engine, and I go through it. Once in a while you get one with the cranks worn 5,000ths or more and something where it got dirt through it and it's not savable. But I don't charge a guy if they send me an engine and it's not rebuildable or not worth rebuilding. But so I do engine rebuilding and of course modifying. And sleeve pinching, if someone just sends me a piston and sleeve, it's only $15 to resize it.
Okay.
If they do their own engine work and stuff. And what else do I do? I don't know. That's about. I do have some tools that I just started making on my 3D printer. If you have a drone, if you do racing drones and stuff, you got to have a 3D printer to print some of the stuff. So I've been messing with that for like a year and a half, and just started designing some stuff recently. And so what I designed is a little tool to go in, because a lot of guys, I recommend using a zip tie to take the sleeve out. I don't know how you do it, but you want to catch that exhaust port and just turn the engine over and push that sleeve out.
Right.
And
I use a zip tie when I do mine. But yeah, that's pretty much how I do it. Yeah, but I'm interested in that, in your tool that you have.
Yeah, so I had made one a couple of years ago just on the lathe. It's basically kind of the same principle as a zip tie, because you don't want anything metal. I mean, that's kind of one of my biggest pet peeves. People send me a piston and sleeve or a whole engine that's been taken apart and stuff, and you can tell they're using screwdrivers to take the sleeve out, and they're nicking them up and stuff. So so I started. I thought, with my 3D printer, I can make a tool. It basically catches the exhaust port, same as using a zip tie, but it's a little wider land. It's because sometimes if you got a stuck sleeve, it'll just cut that zip tie right off. Yeah. So that's what it just basically catches. It goes in there, just a cylinder kind of, and catches the exhaust port. And then I also made it's just a round plastic shaft that drops in. You take the carb out for a piston lock. Basically, I don't like piston locks, because if you got something really tight, you're putting stress on the rod with a piston lock or tool, so that goes in through the spark or the glow plug. So what I found a few years ago, if you had a flywheel that came loose, and you can't hang on to it, because I always, when I'm taking a clutch off, I just put a channel lock on the clutch and then just take the nut off, whatever. But if that spins, sometimes you really have no way of stopping the engine from spinning. So I always just took anything, aluminum or plastic, and kind of just stuffed it down. Took the carb out, stuffed it down in the crank window, and then that's your piston lock. That's your lock. So I decided when I made this tool to take the sleeve out that I would just include one of those in case you ever needed to lock the engine.
Yeah. Do you have one of Do you have one of those tools close to you that you can show everybody what it looked like? Or
I got one in the next room I could go grab.
yeah, go grab it right quick. Yeah. Hey, y'all think of some questions now. Y'all gonna have a question time coming up real soon. So I'm gonna let y'all ask some questions, that things y'all want to ask too. So y'all get them questions together. Get all y'all questions together. Don Foss, I'm glad to see you in here, man. You got that fifth scale, Monte SS. Is she ready, Don? Yours.
Okay, so I was just working on this. It's an old MR Ninja 28 today. Guys wants it modified for drag racing. So
okay.
But basically you just take this tool.
Uh-huh.
So you get it here. Yeah. It's just got a step on it. And you put it down in the exhaust port. It just catches the exhaust port.
Okay.
So it's just, same principle as a zip tie. Let's see. So, and then the other one is just let's see, we'll get it here. It's just a piece, it's just a round plastic piece, and you put it in there and put it in the crank window to lock the engine if you need to get the flywheel, if you need to do that at some point. They're just 3D printed.
Yeah, because I had an engine myself I was working on the other day, man, and it kept, when I was going to take the fly, I was putting the flywheel back on, and I put the collet on. I put the little washer on first, then I put the collet on, and then I put the flywheel on, and then when I start tightening that nut down, the whole, the piston and the rod, was the crank was spinning, so it wouldn't let me tighten it down enough. So you know what I'm saying. So I needed I either needed a piston stop tool, or I know what to get now for it. So next time I might have to go and invest in one of your tools. So, but yeah.
Well, I'll send you a kit here. And
okay.
I also been developing, but I haven't done it yet. Is on this the sleeve tool is making like a moon shape, half moon shape piece that slides over it so it can't kick out when you because sometimes even the zip ties will kind of slip out of there and stuff. So this one, like a half moon piece, but you'd need one for each different bore size, So I've done it I made one for the most common sizes, but I haven't done it for all the other sizes. But.
I got you. Okay, but why do they do that? Why do some engines, when you go putting your flywheel and your clutch and stuff on, some of them they just tighten the nut down, they'll tighten all the way up, with no problem. But some of them that the crank, starts to spin. Is there a reason why, or?
Usually when you're doing the flywheel nut or the clutch nut, it a lot of times it might be some old Loctite or something on there, and it doesn't spin. It doesn't thread on there good. So it's hard to say. Sometimes like a new engine, it's tight at the top, and you probably don't have that problem quite as often. But I think a lot of times I found just Loctite on the threads when you're putting it, because I always Loctite the clutch nut there. But
me too. Yeah. But yeah. Okay, bro. From there, man, we can talk about a lot of guys here, they have those big block engines like you just showed, like the Nova Rossi's 28.8s. They have the LRP 32s, the LRP 30s, the LRP 30 28s, and the Nova Rossi 28 7-port. A lot of guys have those engines in here. So what's the most common? Okay, let me ask you like this: with those engines, is it only one particular mod to do, or is it different types of mods you can do on those type of engines? Like some, like you said, that guy wanted a drag mod. Is it different type of mods you can do, or is it just once you do a mod, it's just a mod? You know what I'm saying? Is it different types of mods modifications you can do, or?
Yeah, I usually do it according to what they're using it for. If they're if they're saying they're using it for drag racing, that's a little more extreme mods. The exhaust port will be a little bit higher and open the crank window a little bit more and stuff.
Right.
And then if you're racing, you don't really want that that wild of a mod. So I don't usually, like, some guys will have a drag mod on their site. It costs this much and a standard mod this much, but I usually just kind of do it tailored to what they need. Usually, even if it's for 8-scale off-road racing, I'll ask them if their track is slippery, if they're running in a buggy or truggy. Just kind of, because the truggy needs the low end power more than the than the top end, or to kind of, I almost like to modify an engine if the guy is experienced with that engine. As if they run a you got the Reds hat, I'll just say a Reds R5R or whatever. And if they ran that engine last year and they want some improvements, or they ran that engine and got a gallon on it, they kind of know it, and they feel they need a little more top end, or if they need some different, want something more out of it, But the bashers, the bashers and they kind of just want more power all over, so it's a little different. But yeah, for drags, it's a little different. Drags would be more like an on-road engine where they're more top end, exhaust ports higher and stuff. So and there is, this Ninja that I worked on, they haven't made that for a few years, but this one's got it's got some sleeve work done on it from somebody. And sometimes you'll get an engine where the owner or friend of theirs will just do a little cuts on it and stuff. But I think I've done rebuilt or modified 3 or 4 engines this year. And some of them were from pretty reputable guys. They've been doing it longer than me even, or I don't like to call people out, but now one of them has had crank timing adjusted on it, and one was a Reds. One was a Reds engine, and Reds typically come pretty. I don't know if you've watched any of my YouTube videos on engine breakdowns and stuff of new engines.
Yeah, I race for Reds myself, but yeah, I watch your videos religiously, man. Like I said, you've done some work for me before. I just need like minor stuff, like engines repinch. You'd have done a repinch and stuff for me before, so on the off R, and but like I said, a lot of guys in here they run Reds, no Rossies, Alphas. We're gonna talk about Alphas and Rex. I mean Alphas and
the Argus.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the Argus engine, the Alpha engines, and the FX engines, and just a little bit of everything. But right now we'll keep on we'll stay on the no Rossi 28.8 for right now. But yeah. So
yeah, I guess what I was kind of going was if you're gonna send an engine off to modify it, kind of do a little homework ahead of time. Kind of ask that modifier what they do and stuff. And there's some guys, some guys that really don't do the engine timing numbers. I'll sometimes put those on my videos and stuff of the new engine, kind of compare them, because I can kind of tell what an engine will run like before, without even running it. If it has a high exhaust port, it's going to have a little more top end, or if it's got bottom end and stuff. And like a Reds engine, those typically come with a little less crank timing, so you got some room there to improve. To be honest, if you're racing a bone stock engine nowadays, it doesn't really matter if it's Reds or OS or Alpha or anything. They're going to be competitive. If you crash, twice in a race, if you're kind of intermediate driver, you don't need a modified engine really. You can have, you can have it modified and do it if you want to, but it's not going to win your race for you. I guess
I understand that. So explain a little bit more of the crank time. What you mean by crank timing? Tell us a little bit more in depth with how the crank timing. What's that all about?
Well, I guess you know, in the carb opening there, you see the window of the crank opens up and closes, so that at so many degrees it'll open and then so many degrees close, and then
Right.
so there's a program that I use. I do a lot of measuring, and then there's a program that tells me how many degrees that window opens to let air in, and how many degrees it closes. And I'm actually going to do a video. I got a block I've cut apart and stuff.
Okay.
I've been kind of working on that block, and you know, like I cut a sleeve, took an old engine and cut the block and sleeve, and I'm going to probably do a video about that sometime when I get time. But
so hold
kind
on,
of explain that a little bit more. But basically, when the crank opens and lets air in there, and
yeah. Go ahead, I'm listening.
When it closes, this crank time.
So basically, you're saying when the opening right here.
Yeah, that's when that's spinning. When it in the block, when you look on the carb hole, when you see that open and then close, that's your crank timing, and it's just so many degrees. And if you open that up, you can usually increase power or cut on one side versus the other and stuff. But it depends on the engine. If you look at like an OS speed, a lot of those, they're 220 degrees of crank timing, and they're kind of, I mean, unless it's for on-road or drag racing or stuff, usually I don't touch that because I don't want to go any more than that. But like a red, sometimes they'll be only 190 degrees.
Right.
So you got, 20, 30 degrees you can add to that. And it gets it kind of, open up the crank timing a lot of times just opens up that mid-range and just kind of lets it breathe a little bit. You can kind of feel that. But there's a lot of modifiers that don't do that. They don't change that crank timing. They just do the cuts, or they might silicone fill, or some things. But
yeah, see, that's the main reason why when I first started doing my channel, man, I always would reference you, because you hear about all these other modders, you hear about all of them, but they're not doing social media to show more what they're about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You put your money where your mouth is. You get on here, you do your videos, you show, how this engine performs without a mod, you show how it performs without the mod, showing, like you said, showing the crank numbers and all that. But all these other modders, where are they at? You know what I'm saying? They so quiet. I mean, I just feel like if they was, especially during this time, we got all this opportunity with showing your work, showing what kind of business you do with using social media or whatever. I know everybody ain't really, cool with getting on the camera and stuff like that, but that's just a big plus to show what you do and to sell your, your merchandise, your products, stuff like that. So that's why I always push you. If anybody asks me, Core, EKJ, do you know anybody that do modding or whatever? I got this engine that I want to get a little bit of work done. I always recommend you, because you out front, you out on social media showing stuff you do. You know what I'm saying? So you can stand behind that, because you got proof of what you done by just showing them a video that I've done this engine before with this person. So, that's why I really enjoy your work and like your work and like yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like you, because you're out there. You know what I'm saying? Showing us what you do. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. But yeah, man. Again, as far as like the crank and stuff, so we're talking about the crank. What benefit is it to have like this crank right here? It is silicone fill. What benefit is to have a silicone fill crank versus a non-silicone fill crank? So
it's a pretty subtle difference. A lot of people think, just with the silicone there, it's smooth and it kind of lets the air flow better, which it does to a point. But the biggest reason to fill a crank is to be able to drill out that area. If you show on there, it's quite a bit of material there that you would drill out to fill you're basically drilling that out if it's not already done. A lot of engines nowadays are already silicone filled, or even the Novarasis, they come kind of hollow there, but not filled. So those are easy. You can just fill them, and you're taking away a little on the Novarasi. At least you're taking away a little crankcase volume in there and stuff. But the biggest thing is to get that weight. Get that there's that material there that you can drill out, lighten up the crank so it spins faster, and then fill it with the lighter silicone.
Okay.
And sometimes, like I started doing it lately. It actually gives me a little bit of space. I can, like you're talking about the LRP and the Novarasi 28. If you look at that LRP 32, which is really popular,
right?
You look at how big that piston is, and you look at that crank, and that crank looks about the same as a 21.
Right.
And they do a lot of cuts. The SH and Dynamite have a lot of cuts on them stuff, so they actually take a little bit of that balance crank weight, on the backside. So there's not a lot of crank weight there on the counterbalance. So a lot of times when I do an LRP or even a Novarasi, any 28 or to 32, I'll actually put a little piece of carbide in that silicone on the bottom side to let it. And I'm not the one that thought of it. Alpha does it on some of their Dragon engines. They put a little brass weight in the silicone fill. So, but I just use some junk carbide and put it in there. It kind of gives a little more of a counterbalance.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, and also as far as like since we're talking about the crank, on the crank pin, how do we know when it's worn down than normal? How could we measure that to know if our crank is still pretty good? Crank pin, the pin is still.
The best way is with a micrometer. That's what I use. And you can pick up a micrometer for $15 or less, maybe Harbor Freight or something. But a caliper does work, but a caliper really is only accurate to 1 or 2 thousandths of an inch, So a micrometer is the best, and it's only going to wear on one side of that pin. On the top side is on the stroke when it goes down. So it's going to wear on that thrust side, and then the rod's only going to wear on that top side of the bushing too. So I like to kind of go by the total wear. So say the crank's worn 1,000ths and the rod's worn 1,000ths. You have 2 thousandths total, slop there, which isn't too bad. But any crank over like 3 thousandths wear, I like it might work as a backup engine, but you get that slop in there, you could break a rod, or it's just at high RPM something could go on. But so I do kind of total wear, and I don't usually replace rods unless they have a lot of wear, because some guys will just replace them. But I think they're fine unless they over revved them, you had a run away or something, you should probably replace it. But I usually go by the wear,
okay.
And that kind of determines if you if you send an engine in or you're doing a rebuild yourself, whether it's the engine's junk or not. Is if you got a lot of crank and rod wear, most engines, if you buy a new crank, you're talking 2/3 of the price of a new engine, so.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So as far as the crank, what all technique do you use for, like, I know some cranks have the Tuscan slugs in them.
Yeah.
Is that also used as balancing, or do you?
Yeah.
Would you ever put like a slug in the front of in the back of the crank like that, or how would you do
I have
that?
done it I have done it 2 or 3 times, but I'm just not really set up to do that. It's kind of, especially at tungsten's so hard. If you have much of a press fit with tungsten, it'll shatter and stuff. So I would have to charge too much, I think, to do that tungsten weight. The factories are set up to do it. That's why I started doing it, some weight in the silicone fill. That way it's just easy. I don't have to drill that. Because the cranks are pretty hard. You'd have to drill that out and then have that bore size kind of perfectly straight in there.
Right.
and then and then press a piece in there. And I was kind of worried about what if it came out on the guy, or something too. Then you're buying the guy a new engine and stuff. So I kind of shied away from, I can do it, but I don't really like to do that tungsten weight in the crank. And then like there's some engines that put like a brass weight in there. I don't know what material they're using, but there's a couple different kinds of engines that use a brass weight in there, which is a lot easier to work with. Brass is pretty soft, and you could actually just kind of, press it in there pretty good. But
yeah,
if you look at like the weight, specific gravity of brass versus steel, you're not really much heavier than what you replaced when you drilled that out. So that's why tungsten, I believe, is a lot better, because tungsten's quite a bit heavier, carbide and tungsten. But
okay. Okay, going from the crank. Okay, we're gonna leave the crank and go up towards the piston. Okay, one more question about the crank. Now this is something I just really found out myself. What's the difference between a chrome plated crank pin and the DLC coated crank pin and just a normal crank? You know what I'm saying? What's the difference between those? What performance difference would you get between those two?
I think performance-wise, as far as power, it'd probably be all the same. Now, the DLC coated crank, those don't wear out unless you get sand in them. You can replace rods, and that's the nice thing about a DLC coated crank. You might be able to get twice the life out of your engine or more if you just replace the bearings as needed and a rod. And you take care of it, don't get it hot, and don't get dirt through it. That crank looks like brand new when you're after 10 gallons. But a chrome's better than not coated at all. Because chrome's harder than, say, I don't know. I think the only one that does it is Alpha. I think they do a chrome, and so that chrome is pretty hard. And I've seen pretty good results on those. Not wearing and stuff, but it's not quite as good as the DLC. But if it's a little bit cheaper and stuff, and then uncoated can wear more, but it depends on the material too, or the hardness, because a lot of your Italian engines, the Novarossi and Pico and Reds is made by Pico and stuff, and then most of the Italian engines got a nice hard crank, and then some of the Taiwan I sold, talking to Alpha and Argus, and back in the day, Go engines and stuff, they had a good crank, but it wasn't quite as hard, but if you're saving, half the price, or, quit saving some money on it, it might not last quite as long, but it's pretty gonna, I guess for the most part, it's gonna, the life of the engine might be a little bit less, but you paid less,
Okay.
And actually going on that, probably the softest crank is an OS engine that isn't coated. Those are, I did a video here a while back, and I did a hardness check on the crank, and OS to this day, the uncoated cranks are the softest. They're softest than, SH or Dynamite or any of those, Alpha, Argus, any of those uncoated cranks. The softest ones are the OS cranks.
Yeah. And back again, but on that Reds, the Reds are the older models. They were based off Pico, but the Scuderia, the new line, they're totally different than Pico now. So they done upgraded their materials than that old.
They said that there is some similarities. I know. Yeah, I did that review, and I was talking to that Federica Rossi, the Elliot Boots' girlfriend. She kind of does their the PR and stuff for Reds. Yeah. And she said that, she said what you said, that they, on the Scuderia and stuff, it's not made by Pico. It's kind of their own thing. But some of the parts still look a lot like it. So I'm wondering if they do part of them, some of them things themselves, and then the other things they get from Pico. I'm not 100% sure, but some of the parts do look pretty similar to the old engines. So
yeah, man. But okay, going on to the piston. Okay. Well, let me ask you this before we go any further. Okay, if somebody wanted to send you an engine to do some work on it, do you prefer it to be brand new, or do you prefer to have some gallons on it? What's your stance on that?
I don't. I will modify a used engine as long as it's not worn too much. Talking about the crank wear, as long as it doesn't have a lot of crank wear, crank or rod wear, or something's wrong with it, it's really not worth it for the person to get it modified if it's not going to last. So I just prefer that it's in good shape.
Yeah.
Obviously, new is probably good, but there's some modifiers don't touch it unless it's new. But I can check it out, and if it's in good shape, then I'll still modify it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. To the piston. Now, what's the performance based? How can I say it? What's the difference in the performance between a dome piston and a flat head piston?
I think it's pretty minimal. I know Novarossi did it quite a few years. Their higher end engines had a little bit of a dome to it and stuff, but I don't think it's really much of a difference. It's a little bit higher compression, of course, but I don't really think there's a difference in power wise or anything.
Okay. Okay. And is there any reason why? Okay. Or it's like these newer engines that's out now. Is it be a reason why you wouldn't mod it because it's already have enough power, or would you go ahead on and mod it, to make it that much better? Or are some already where they need to be, far as like the timing numbers and stuff like that? Have you ran across any situation like that?
Yeah, I guess like I said earlier, it's the percentage of gains on some of the engines. Say you take a high, $500 OS engine, you might only get 5 to 10% increase in power, and that's probably being generous at 10%. Where if you take a different engine, like a Reds, I talked about the crank timing being a little bit less on the Reds. Your gains are going to be more on the Reds, or if it's even a budget engine, if it, like any of them, if it's more of a budget engine or RTR type engine, you're going to see a lot more gains than because like I said, most of the race engines nowadays got enough power for most people.
Okay. Or with the piston again, just describe the thing called piston lap. I get some questions about lapping the piston. What's that process? Lapping the piston.
I did that quite a bit when I was selling Alpha engines and Argus engines. They come extremely tight. I mean, they were really hard to break in. So I had heard of other people doing it, and each person kind of has their own little way of doing it. But some people, I had a friend in our local in Minnesota here that raced, and he would put some grease on the crank pin and put some lapping compound in the engine and just turn it over with a drill, which I don't think that's a good way to do it. But what I do is I have a piece of plastic that I turned on the lathe, and it has a taper of a piston or of a sleeve. So your sleeve has 4 to 5 thousandths taper in it, so it's tight at the top, right? And so I kind of mimicked that sleeve size, and of course each piston's kind of different. Each different brand engine, sometimes a different bore and stuff. And I just use a really, really fine lapping compound and just run it in there by hand. I'm not spinning it with a drill or nothing. And then you can kind of see it just shining right at the top where it seals, because it's got that taper. It's going to be only at the top, and it does a nice job of just taking that initial hard pinch away. You still need to break it in and stuff, but it's just going to go so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and I don't think there's too many people doing that nowadays. I think like Alpha engines, some of those, the Dragons and stuff, come broke in, and I don't know how they're doing it, if they're actually running it, or I think I saw a reference to lapping at 1.2 from them. So I don't know if they're lapping them or running them in, or but
okay. Yeah, like I said, I just ran the SIC race, Southern Indoor Championship race, a couple of weeks ago, and it's more towards the Alpha engines. I talked with Ryan Lutz about the Alpha. I talked to him about his car going with WRC, the new brand that used to be an on-road brand. And he showed me the car, and he showed me the Alpha 4. Alpha Dragon 4. It just came out from that engine itself. Talking about the Alpha engines. Just give a little history of the Alphas. I know you dealt with them a while back, and you kind of got away from it. And I think since they're coming out with this Dragon 4 line, so they're gonna be more on the market, especially here in the US more now since Ryan Lutson got back with Alpha. So you give us a little history on those Alphas, because a lot of guys in here have those Alphas. Just as far as what the performance and the durability and why they kind of fell off back in the day, up until now. Yeah, just give it.
Yeah, they were kind of the second Taiwan company to come out. The first Go engines were pretty popular for a while. I mean, Novarosi's back in the day were $300 to $350 for, just even your P5 was probably $300. So Go engines kind of came out, and they were around $200, and the performance was good. It didn't last quite as long, but they were, you could initially get in. So Alpha was kind of the second Taiwan company to come out, and I sold quite a few. At the time, Carlton Epps from RC, he ran the RC Pro Series, and he was the importer of Alpha engines at the time, and I sold quite a few of those. I'd just get them from him and sell them, and they were good. And then for the money, they had like more power than a lot of the high end engines and stuff, so they were good. And then I had kind of branched off because Argus is made by Alpha, really similar. There might just a few little subtle differences, made in the same factory and stuff. And I sold those for 3-4 years. But then, about that time, Novarossi started doing their Novarossi Direct, and some of them were, and the price of the Novarossi engines came way down.
Right.
And so, you could buy a P5. You could buy a P5 for under $150, and you're not going to sell many Taiwan engines at $200. So I kind of quit. I kind of quit selling them at that time. And they came out with, kind of the first Alpha was doing, their first version of the Dragon, and they started going more high end. So they were over $300 for those, and I just felt that I might sell a few, but they're just not. The guys are going to go for the cheaper engines unless they're sponsored. If you're sponsored by somebody, you kind of stick with that. But so I kind of felt that they went the wrong direction, where they went, instead of a $200 engine, they went $300 plus. They're a good engine and stuff, but I think at the $350 range, there's some good options. So.
But just as far as the Alpha's durability, tell us about.
For a while, that pinkhead Lutz that they had some problems with the rods, and we had a couple guys locally, and they had some. I think they had a few bad rods, and guys would break rods, and they I think that's kind of when the distributor kind of quit selling them, and nobody really was bringing them into the U.S. and stuff. So I think they've got that solved. They got the coated cranks and stuff now too. And I got one in one time, and I sent the email to Alpha and stuff, because actually what was happening, I think the bushing that goes on the crank pin was actually not pressed in the rod enough. So the bushing would spin, and then your oil hole wasn't lined up, or it would spin in there and then break the rod. So
So
I think that was the problem they were having.
So yeah, so everybody that got those alphas, Brian Lutz editions, they just need to pay attention to that bushing. Just watch that bushing every so often.
Yeah, just watch the rod and it's the older, we're talking 6 years ago or more, so there are probably not too many of them around right now.
Yeah, I know a couple of guys here that has. I know Ryan Lutz had the blue-headed one and the pink-headed one. So, World Edition engines, and but yeah, that's all. Far as okay, let's go back to the engine. Far as the sleeves, all right. Far as the sleeves on your engines and the ports, we had a discussion about which port is the fastest. Can a 3-port engine be just as fast as a 7-port, 5-port, or 7-port engine?
Yes, I think so. They kind of got when engines were 15 years ago, 20 years ago, manufacturer would have their 3-port kind of be their budget engine, and then 7 ports or 8 ports or 9s or whatever would be their on-road engines. So the number of ports really isn't as, it makes a difference in the where they are and all that, but it doesn't really make a difference in the power band you're getting and stuff, and the more overall power. It's more on the height of those ports and the difference between the height between, they call it the blowdown, is between the top of the exhaust port to the top of the transfer ports. And that's your blowdown. So the higher your blowdown, so the higher your exhaust port, the more top end you're going to get, and you're going to give away a little bottom end. So the height and the timing numbers are more important than the number of ports. Okay. You probably heard, there's some 7-port engines they recommend for truggy. I'm trying to remember which one which brand that was. There was one that said, the 7-port, the guys would run in the truggy, and the 5 or 3 or whatever they'd run in the buggy. So it's more with the the timing of the ports and what that engine's for than the number of ports.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. Okay. And as far as on the sleeve, how do you determine how to do the fangs off the ports? How do you determine how to do the fangs on the sleeve work?
Well, yeah, the fangs don't really. They do help, but compared to some of the other timing numbers and stuff, it's not as noticeable. But I always like because they have a little angle to them, and it's basically directing that air away from the exhaust port, because you don't want the air to come in and go right out the exhaust port. You want it to go to the kind of the backside, and then swirl around. So it's basically air's gonna come in and swirl around and go to the exhaust port, because 2 cycles that the air coming in is pushing the air going out the exhaust. So you want the air to come in and fill the cylinder without having the fuel and air go out the exhaust, and that's why pipes make a big, any kind of 2-cycle, the pipes make a difference, because they're kind of the back pressure and all that and everything working together. But so I do believe there is a pretty good reason that the fangs are angled and stuff, but and sometimes a bevel under that port. That's what I was talking about before. Some of the older engines, those cuts were just straight. There was no fangs, there was nothing, no bevel there or anything. So you can actually make quite a bit of difference on an engine like that. But some of the new ones that already have cuts and stuff there, you're really just kind of doing a little bit of a preference. But doing the timing numbers are going to do a lot more than putting fangs on. So
okay. As far as like I said, porting and painting of the sleeve, when do you know when you put enough fangs and all that on the sleeve without making the sleeve brittle? Because a lot of people, we all done seen when some models do too much to the sleeve and it basically breaks in half, because it has really they done drilled out a lot of the material and made the sleeve brittle. You know what I'm saying? How enough's enough, so you won't make the sleeve brittle like that and break. You know what I'm saying? So
I personally don't do an extreme mod and stuff. I've seen, yeah, like you say, some they do a ton of cutting on them and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm more of a race, modifier and stuff where I want the thing to last and I'm not going to do an extreme amount of cutting because any material you take away in the block or in the sleeve, that actually drops the case volume or the volume that the engine, the case holds, because when that piston comes down, that charges, that air, the piston comes down, that air goes in through the ports. Well, if you have a small amount of air fuel in that case, it's a little more direct. It's a little more faster moving than if you had, say, a big case. It's a little more dead, where that piston comes down and it doesn't make as much a difference because the piston's going down and the air is kind of going around, but it's not as fast because it's a larger volume to kind of distribute. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but just that case volume makes a difference. So any material you take away does affect case volume. Okay.
So a model can do some modifications to the case itself, huh?
Yeah, I don't usually do a ton, but yeah, there's most of the engines nowadays have got some pretty good cuts kind of on the backside above the bearing and stuff, but yeah, I don't usually do that too much. But yeah, you can do that too, and I mess more with the back plates than the case itself.
Okay.
So
okay. Well, yeah. We talked about the sleeve, we talked about the piston, and touched on the case of the engine. Now, you get your engine modded. What lifespan can I expect out of modded engine compared to a non-modded engine? Is it a big difference in the longevity, or
it depends on your usage and stuff. I think if you're pretty moderate racer and you're not revving it really high or running it really hot, your difference is going to be very minimal. Like, it's going to last the same amount of time as the unmodified engine. But if you're a basher and you're running that LRP 32 and you're running it, 40,000 RPM and not 35 because it's got more power, it might not last as long because you're running it harder. The other thing too is, like, if you race truggy versus buggy, and I've talked to other guys, engine guys and stuff too, and it's 20 to 30% more wear on an engine just because you're running it in a truggy versus a buggy. If you say you got 5 gallons on an engine, you got same engine in your truggy and same engine in your buggy. Right. That truggy engine is going to wear more because it's got wider tires. It needs more power off the corner. It's more, you need more torque, and you're loading that engine a lot harder on the truggy than you are on the buggy. The buggy, you're probably feathering it off the corner, and the truggy, you're hammering on it. So depends on the usage and stuff too. But, overall, I don't think there's really anything with the mod that's making it less, wear less. But if you're running more RPM or, running in grass with big tires and stuff, and it's got more power, it might, it's going to probably wear a little bit more. So.
Okay. Why, if you mod, would a mod add more top end or bottom end to an engine? It just depend on what you want, or can you add more top or bottom to an engine through modding?
Yeah, that's why I like to ask people what they're, that's why I like them to run it, know what that engine's like first, and tell me if they need more top or bottom. But a lot of times it's kind of a trade-off. If you want more top end, you might lose a little bit of bottom end, it's pretty hard to get, from top to bottom more power. Like I said, if you raise the exhaust port, you're going to get more top end. It's going to be a little bit smoother on the bottom end. The mid and top will pick up. So yeah, you can kind of tailor that. And I can't remember what engine, maybe like the Go 5 port, or there was some engines. I would actually just not even modify it, but I'd just make a little, 10,000 shim to go under the sleeve and just raise the sleeve up. and then you just have to readjust your head shimming. So you didn't modify the engine at all, but you just kind of raised the sleeve up.
Yeah.
You know, say like if you run that Reds R5R, they're probably a little punchy on the bottom, and maybe you need a little bit smoother in the buggy. And make a shim that will go under the sleeve, just under the head of the sleeve. So just raise that sleeve up, and then you readjust your head shimming, and without any modifications, you just changed your. I mean, you're modifying it, but you're not really doing any cutting or anything, and you changed your power band to make it a little smoother on the bottom, a little more top end.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of a trade-off.
Okay. Okay. So you can adjust that a little bit with shimming. You saying?
Yeah, I don't do that too often, but there was an engine a while back, a few years ago that we didn't really need to modify, but it was, a little bit smoother for a buggy, shimming it. I haven't done that for a couple of years, but it is possible.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And it's possible to do the other way too. And, if in a lathe, take off a little bit about the head of the sleeve, take off a little bit and lower the sleeve. I've done that probably more recently than I have the other way. You get like OS, the square stroke OS guys say they need a little more bottom end on those sometimes, and that might be the case with that. Kind of lower the sleeve in a little bit.
Okay, and touch on that. So what's the difference between a square stroke and the long stroke, like with the OS? And I think they had it in the Nova Rosses too, right?
Yeah, Nova Rossi's, they've had a bunch of different strokes and bores and strokes. Like the Bonito had that really small piston, so a small bore, and then the stroke was long.
Yeah.
And then they've had some, maybe the Mantra, or something like that. Some of them they got, the bore is about the same as the stroke. So it's really, and it's kind of, I don't know. It all depends on how the sleeve is timed and the crank is timed and all that. But
okay,
I haven't really ran the Bonito a whole lot myself. I think they kind of originally thought the longer stroke was more torque, but if you kind of imagine that piston coming up and you have the glow plug lights that ignites that fuel combustion, and then if you have a smaller diameter piston, that's a little less area for the explosion to push. So I don't know, the old OS VZB that was really, really popular back in the day when that first, maybe 06, 07, that was kind of I don't remember if it was square, but it had a bigger piston and less stroke and stuff. Yeah. And that was really, it really had really good bottom end too. So it kind of depends on the whole package.
Yeah.
But, and it seems like a lot of the on-road engines, 8-scale on-road, they use the long stroke. So they might use them more for RPM and stuff, but.
Okay. And far as your pipes, it's a lot of people on here that I don't know, it's in YouTube saying that if you have a pipe, if you get a modded engine, you got to have a specific pipe to go with the modded engine. Okay, say I ran, just for example, I had an alpha engine, and I got an alpha pipe, but I send my alpha engine off to you to get modded. So can I, with my alpha pipe that I had, my original alpha pipe that I got, would that be fine to run on that new modded alpha engine?
Yeah, it would be fine to run, and just I kind of use pipes a little. Some engine, some pipes are better on the bottom end. Some give you more top end. You might, depending on your track or whatever, want something a little smoother on the bottom, and so I kind of use the pipe to kind of tailor the power band and stuff. But so it kind of depends. I mean, you might be able to find a better pipe that works and stuff, but yeah, I don't. And you can cross. You could run a Nova Rossi pipe on that, that alpha or whatever too. But you got to do some, it's basically, if you got a few pipes, try them.
Yeah.
Carb restrictors, anything like that. There's really no one thing solves it. You go out and test and try it, see what you like.
I got you. So like I said. So is it best to say stick with brand specific, like Alpha pipe with an Alpha engine, regardless if it's modern or not, a Reds pipe with a Reds engine, Nova Rossi pipe with a Nova Rossi engine, whatever? Or I mean, you can't, like you said, true enough, you can mix. I know you can mix and match, and that's how you find out different stuff by, you know, trying different things. So is it more of a just a trial and error type thing, or it'd be best really to stick with the same brand and pipe would be the easiest route to go?
I think the easiest and best thing to do is to stick with that brand specific one. But yeah, it's not always the case. You want to play around. You're not going to hurt anything trying something else.
Right.
I think they do kind of tune those, you know, and with Reds or whatever, they've got 2 or 3 different pipes, and they kind of recommend one for a low end power, one for a truggy, you know, and then one for a buggy, or, you know, for more top end and stuff. Kind of stick with. But then you at least kind of know what kind of power band you're going to get with that engine. Where if you try a different brand pipe, you might not know what it's going to do on your brand, you know. So
right. I got you. Okay. Well, it's like the bearings. Are the ceramic bearings and the steel bearings, are they? I know the ceramic is that a bigger difference between those bearings, as far as like if you want to use ceramic versus your steel bearing, in a modified engine? What you think about that?
I think there is a performance advantage to the ceramic bearings, at least on the rear bearing. Those balls are a little bit lighter. I think the main difference is they're just lighter. But if I put a ceramic bearing in your engine, you're not going to be able to feel the difference. I don't think, you know, it might run, you know, 1,000 more RPM or something maybe, or, you know, so I usually, you know, even if an engine, you know, on my engines, I just ran the steel bearing, and first time I rebuilt it, I just swapped it out with a ceramic, you know, when I had it apart and stuff. So I think, you know, it's a good thing to have the ceramic bearing, but you're not gonna feel the difference of it. Yeah. And on the front bearings, you know, the front bearing, you know, the small one by your clutch, that one tends to get more dirt. You know, that one's sealing your engine also, so you want to replace that more often, because you know, that can kind of, I like a double sealed bearing. Some guys like the open sealed. You know, the open ones kind of flush a little bit more with the fuel in the engine, but I kind of like to trap that dirt in the grease in the between the seals and stuff. So depending on if you're on a really dirty conditions, I would change that quite a bit more often. And I don't really like a ceramic bearing out. I think there is a little bit of a performance advantage of a ceramic front bearing, but like I said, if you got a double sealed bearing and that little bit of grit gets in there, and it can wear those ceramic balls more than the steel balls, and so it'll loosen up a little bit faster. So I just stick with mostly steel bearings on the front bearings, but and most guys, when I do a rebuild or something, I almost always put ceramics in. You know, I use Avids, and it's $10 for a steel and $20 for a ceramic. So for $10 more, you just put the ceramic in.
Okay. So how much would you charge to put somebody's, you know, bearings and all that again? Because it's some guys asking questions about bearings and sending their motors off. What would you charge to do like a bearings and stuff like that?
Well, if someone just sends me the bare block, and they buy the bearings from me, I'll just swap them all for free. But you know, I charge $30 to rebuild an engine, and that includes changing out the bearings if they're needed, you know, and then the price of the bearings, or if it needs, you know, that is additional, you know.
Right.
So if it needed, most engines, when I do a rebuild, it's $30 to rebuild it, and $6 for that new front bearing, and that's about all we need, you know. And if it needs a rear bearing, then, you know, $20 additional or whatever too. And that's all, you know, the rebuild charge is all the same whether we replace them or not, you know.
Yeah, can't beat that. $30 for a rebuilt engine, and then if you send the bearings with it, you'll put them in, you know, still within that $30 range. So you can't beat that. Can't beat that at all. But yeah, okay. From the engine block now, we're going to the back plate. Is any specific thing you like to do to the back plate to get a little bit extra performance out of it, or?
Yeah, sometimes you can do a little bit of, you know, some cuts. There's quite a few engines that have different cuts on the top to kind of let the air deflect a little bit. But the biggest performance difference I think you can do is to drill that back plate. So you're basically putting a dimple in the center of it and then drilling the two bypass holes. So they kind of from the center and then drilling 2 holes and stuff. That can make a difference, and it helps mileage a little bit. It gives you a little more RPM. So if you think about it, if you take your engine apart sometime, if you're, you know, one that takes it apart yourself, and take the piston and sleeve out and then put that back plate back in there and look at the air coming in through that crank hole has to fit in that air where that difference between the rod. So basically just that thickness of the rod. So that air comes in and it's got to make a straight 90, you know, a full 90 to go up to the sleeve. So that drilling the back plate, the air comes on and it kind of hits those and deflects with those holes. It's a little hard to describe, but it's yeah. If you take an engine, if you got one apart and have the piston sleeve out, you kind of look at where that air has to go, and it only has the width of the rod to make that corner there.
Okay. But yeah, man, that's pretty much all I had about, you know, the engine themselves. But I did want to ask you about a couple of engines that I had in mind that I was had thought about, and just wanted to ask you about we already talked about the Alpha engine, and got that one out the way. You said going to that Argus engine is, you say, is pretty much an Alpha based engine, pretty much that Argus engine. Tell us about that.
Yeah, they've been around. Argus has been around for quite a while, and I don't know how it all works over in Taiwan. If it's just one company and they got 2 brands, or if it's, you know, because Novorossi, they had the Novorossi and Rex and Top, and it was all one company though. But I don't know if they're just one company or if it's just someone that buys engines with the, you know, and gets their own head, you know, different or whatever with their logo. But I don't know how that works. But yeah, they're very similar. They might not be totally the same. But yeah, I guess those are pretty similar. I do have some. I ordered some a couple weeks ago. They should be showing up any day now. I ordered 3 Argus engines just to do reviews on them on my channel, and they have one that's kind of more like the Alpha Dragon 4. The other one would be more like the Alpha Dragon 3.
Okay.
But I was just kind of curious this difference because they still sell that older model, and it's, you know, it's a $250 engine versus over $300.
Yeah.
So, you know, I kind of wanted to go through them inside, and then the other one I ordered is the Argus 28. It's kind of an RTR. I sold a few back in the day. It's more of an RTR 28 and stuff. I think it's like sells for like $130 or something. So it might be an option for a 28.
Yeah.
And they have, you know, roto start, pull start, and bump start, you know, in those too. So
cool.
I was gonna maybe just do these reviews and then possibly have some. I'm probably going to do like a pre-order thing where if you wanted that 28 or whatever it is, we'll just do a pre-order. You pay for it, and then I order them. They're going to be on Chinese New Year's here soon, so it'll be after that, probably March.
Yeah,
probably March or something. So I was going to do that, but
yeah. I had a question about another guy, one of my good friends in here, Mr. Luchilla. He was asking about the Argus K3. You know, I think K3 engine. Yeah,
that was one of the ones I ordered, the K3 and the K3 Evo to look, and they're very similar to the, you know, the K3 would be a little bit more like the Alpha Dragon 3 probably. just a little older version. And then the Evo K3 Evo is the newest one, more like probably like the Alpha Dragon 4. Yeah. And I know that the newer, the Alpha Dragon 4, and then the new, they do actually come with the drilled backplate, and I think the Alpha 2 too, where they come broke in, and those K3s and K3 Evos come ready to. Well, you have to still put a couple tanks on them and stuff, but they're mostly broke in, and I haven't really seen one for a while. I did do a review on that Alpha Dragon 4, I believe. I got one on my channel, but that was a used one. But
okay, what about he also asked he also asked, is there any more Argus R8s?
Oh, I was emailing with Argus a little bit because Novorossi, you can't get those anymore, or they're hard to find, or I don't know. I kind of heard some rumors that they are going to actually start making engines again, but there's a shortage of engines under $200 to race with right now.
Right.
And I kind of wanted to fill that void and maybe get some Argus in and stuff, but they've got more of the K3 and the K3 Evo and stuff, and they're $250 to $300 plus.
Yeah.
And I was just looking for something under $200, like the Argus R8. That was a great engine. It was kind of similar to the Alpha A852 and real similar to the Lutz too. That 5-port Lutz, the pink head, they first came out with. So the R8 was a good engine, and my son ran that for 2 or 3 years, and I had a good combination with a mod on that and stuff, and actually, the faster, I don't know if you found out, but the fast guys actually have more trouble with fuel mileage than the average guys, because my son, he always ran like one extra lap than I did in qualifying.
Yeah.
And they're on the gas, and Ryan Lutz was the same way. He had trouble making 7.5 minutes, but we had a combination with that R8 a couple years, and we'd let everyone come in and pit, and I'd go 2 more laps than 7.5 minutes, and then we'd go 2 laps plus. And we didn't, in our 30-minute mains, we still didn't have enough mileage to go, you couldn't go 10 minutes to save a stop, but It was nice having that clear pit lane, so having that clear pit lane, and then at the end we just had to do a splash, and you don't have to make sure it's full and everything. You can do a little bit quicker stop. So that I remember a few times that he was in a pack of 5 cars, and they were kind of battling for the lead on that first stop. Yeah, and he was out there he was able to make 2 laps, by himself clean, and that really made a difference on a few races. But
okay, like I said, my Nick Works, he was asking, with the new EU Nitro restrictions, do you know any experience or knowledge with other fuels than Nitro that will correct engines run on after type of fuels without, redesign or anything like that? Basically, he's saying, do you know how Europe is, they're passing that, have passed that law, they can't use no more than, I think, 16% Nitro. So
I think it's 16.
Yeah. So do you know any like more other alternative fuels that can be used to still get the same power and produce good runtime like the Nitro fuel does?
I don't know of anything else you can put in there, besides oil and nitromethane and alcohol. But it is going to be a little bit of a challenge over there. And then some people were talking about they're going to, are the European companies going to design their engines for only 16%, and then we get them in the U.S. we have to reshim or something. But I don't know about that. But I don't think it's necessarily terrible, because a 16%, fuel will be a little bit cheaper because the nitro is the most expensive part of that.
Right.
So I guess, you as a racer or whatever, you'd have a little bit less power, but everyone's going to have a little less power too. So
and then really they will extend runtime too. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I know somebody. There was a good racer that was on my son's team that, he'd run 20% when they were, when they were in TLR and they ran dynamite stuff and they ran the dynamite fuel and he ran 20%.
Yeah.
And he always got this guy always got good mileage and stuff. And then I asked him one time, I'm like, you might need to, lean out your car a little bit. It didn't sound like it was running too much RPM. He's like, oh, I probably wasn't just pulling the trigger all the way. Like, who doesn't pull the trigger all the way down the straightaway, right? Like,
Yeah.
I've never heard of this before. But
yeah.
I guess 16%, it would be kind of a bummer, but I don't think it's the end of the world. As long as you don't get cheaters that can find some, nitro somewhere and add it to their fuel or whatever. But I think, you're going to do some adjustments probably with the head shimming and, but I don't think it's going to be the end of the world or anything, might save a little money and everyone, it'd be more of a spec race, where like you're running 17.5 instead of mod or whatever, but.
Right. But okay, man, back to the engines, man. Okay, we talked about the Alpha and the Argus. What did you think? I saw you did the video of the new Maxi Cinco engine, the newer one.
Yeah.
What did you just do a review on that engine? What did you think about that Maxi engine? Because the older Maxi was pretty much a Nova Rossi based engine, the older Maxi before this one came out.
Yeah, I have seen the older Nova Rossi Maxi and stuff, and then he last year came out. Was it last year or 2019? Anyways, he came out with the Pico based. So it's Pico made, and it's actually really similar, kind of almost between like a Reds. It's not quite what the Scuderia is, but it's kind of real similar to the Reds. It's kind of similar. Pico has their Blast, or it's kind of like a Pico Blast. It's nice. It's got the DLC coated crank.
Right.
The good strong rod on those and stuff. It's a little bit, I think, if I remember correctly, it's a little bit smaller bore, but I think there's a few different bores there on those. The Scuderia and that one, and they're a little bit different than like the R5R or whatever. But yeah, it's a real quality engine. Nice looking engine and stuff. They ran out, but I talked to Maxi a little bit ago, and I think he's getting the newer ones. And I asked him what the difference was, and he said the carburetor was going to be aluminum versus steel. So I don't know if it's the same carb as like the Scuderia, or if it'd be anyways, just a carb difference on the new version coming out this year.
All right, my TTR racing teammate Chauncey Mack, he asked the question: do you ever clean up sleeves and pistons when replacing bearings? And if so, what's your process?
Well, I don't know if he's talking about actually cleaning them up, like with like a diamond file or something, or just cleaning them. I guess if he's going cleaning, like when I do a sleeve, I use like a machinist stone and stone the top of the sleeve to get the flat again. Because if I resize the sleeve and then I have it back out 1 gallon later and I stone that, you can see that it's not quite cleaning up, because those sleeves will move around a little bit. So I'll stone to kind of flatten the surface of the top of the sleeve, and then I'll kind of roll it. I'll kind of slide it on the stone and stone the side of the sleeve. Sometimes you'll get some little burrs in there or some kind of build up, and it doesn't look, really good like a polished sleeve, but I'll kind of stone the side of the sleeve too. And then a lot of times with just the sleeves and stuff, I spray it down with WD-40 and spray it off with an air hose and wipe it down. But that's about all I do, WD-40 isn't good. Just keep it away from the silicone filled cranks, but it is it is a pretty good cleaner when you're wiping it off and stuff.
Okay. My partner RC Jers, he was asking, out of all the engines that you have taken apart, what do you think is the most impressive made engine material, etc.? Like compared to OS, FX, Reds, Pico, or Nova?
I think the highest quality is the FX.
Okay, that was the next. Yeah, that was the next engine I was going to ask you about, the FX.
OS, there's nothing wrong with OS engines. They run great, and guys that love them, you probably know some OS guys. They won't even look at a different engine. But I have an OS engine in one of my cars right now. I like them, but I think materials wise, the FX is really close. The OS is really close to the FX, and I think the piston material on the FX is better. An OS, like an OS speed, if you get it hot, if you get it 260, 270 degrees, it'll start to lose its pinch a little bit. Where if a lot of other engines, like an Alpha or even FX and stuff, you can get them 300 degrees and they'll still have pinch good. And if you get an OS 300 degrees, you probably need to send that sleeve off to get it pinched. But so that's why I kind of lean towards the FX. You can run them. Now, I think OS probably has the FX a little bit on fuel mileage. I think their carbs just a tad bit better for fuel mileage. But and then I really like that red Scuderia. That was a nice quality engine too. That was an impressive looking engine too. So I'd say FX and the red Scuderia are probably my two favorite. I do have one of those. I'm going to do a review on that.
Okay.
Super Veloce, that basically is Scuderia Super Veloce. I got one of those on order. Okay. We're supposed to be in here in February here, so I'll be doing a review on that one too. And that one has a drilled backplate and stuff too.
Right.
But
I think that one was basically, it's basically like the remake of the green headed one that they had a limited edition one that came out. So I think so I think
it's the same as that, just different color and stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, man. Like I said, I'm gonna put the link to the live in the comment box, y'all. So y'all can, if y'all want to come in on the screen and ask Rex some questions, you're welcome to it. If that's all right with you, Rex, take a few questions. They want to come in.
That's fine. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, Rex, if you want to go get you some water or something, man, you can do that while I set this up. You can go get you some water if you need, get a cup of something to drink or something.
I'm all right.
Okay.
I'll be fine.
Okay. Well, let me put this link in the description down here in the box, and I can see if anybody wanna come in and ask a question. If I can get it to do right. Okay. All right, y'all. That's the link right there. Y'all click on that link if y'all want to come in and y'all can ask Rex a direct question that y'all had, just thinking about. Just click on that link and I'll bring you in on the screen. But yeah, but other than that, Rex, like I said, since Ty Tasman really, he didn't sign with Alpha. I mean with FX for this year. As far as his engines that he's gonna race with this year. So do you think he really gonna have a really good, really enjoy those engines, the FX engines?
I think they will. Yeah, I think they'll like them. I think, that's something that FX has kind of been lacking, is at least in the U.S. is a big paid driver. So I think some people will take notice and maybe they'll pick up a little bit. I think for the money, they're a little bit cheaper than an OS. Also, I think they're around the 375. So depends on where you get your OS. Some people get them cheaper than that, but I think for the most part they're over $400. I think for most OSs. But
okay, I'm gonna bring my partner in here, Rex. He got some questions he want to ask you. Hold on, let me bring him on in. Okay.
All right, what is going on, guys?
Nitro Freak, what's going on?
How you doing?
What's up? How you doing, Rex?
Good. How are you?
Good. So, Rex, I had a quick question for you. I'm a big Alpha fan, and I have an older Alpha engine here I want to show you and see what you can tell me about this. Do you recognize this engine?
What's this saying? I see the Alpha logo. What's it say on the other side?
Okay, this is the Taylor-Peterson edition. Have you ever seen this engine?
I've never seen one. No.
No. Okay.
I've heard of Taylor-Peterson, but I haven't seen that one.
I'm trying to figure out what is the age on this engine. I acquired it from somebody. Actually, I acquired this right along with two of the pink-headed Ryan Lutz World editions and one of the blue-headed editions. Now, I know this has to be probably one of the older, probably before the Lutz World editions, because the case looks a little bit older, but I wasn't sure exactly what year this engine came out. It's not something that I'm running. I'm just, just a collector's item. But I thought maybe I'd ask if you had any information on this engine, if you knew anything about it. But if you don't, that's fine. But I do have another question for you. So when you used to be a distributor for Alpha, I know that I think from a video I watched of yours a while back ago, you were one of the very first people to come up with the modded backplate for the Alpha engines, correct?
Yeah. The first one that I know of to do it was EB Mods. I believe EB, and I saw it on one of his engines and tried it on, our engines and stuff. And I was running an Argus at the time. I had this kind of engine I would test stuff on, and I go to the local track and I put it on it. When I did that modified backplate, it felt like in the mid-range, like a turbo spool up, it just kind of like, it just breathed, and I could just feel it spool up in the mid-range, and it gave me more mid to top. And I think
So
sometimes
that was kind of my question. What is the whole benefit of the backplate modification, or what exactly did it do for the Nitro engine?
Yes, I think because I was explaining before, is the air is coming in through the crank hole, and it kind of goes into those holes and deflects. And I don't think it really, in my theory, is it doesn't really affect the low RPM, but once you got more air coming in there, it takes there and it kind of shoots out those holes towards the ports, and kind of like a turbo spool up, and it doesn't really affect on the low end, but on the top end, that air coming in there faster helps it. That was kind of my impression when I first threw it on. I know some people said they've tried a modified backplate and they didn't notice a difference and stuff, but it's hard to say. It's just something you'd have to try yourself. But it also, if it gives you a little more RPM, it might feel a little bit lean on the top, which then it isn't actually lean, but it feels like it's lean on the top. An engine, you feel you got it an hour or two too lean because it's just screaming on the top. It might feel more like that, but not actually be lean. So it is a little bit maybe trickier to tune. But the newer Alphas have those, and that Reds we were talking about, that Super Veloce has it too. And I wasn't the first one to do the drilled backplates, but I think with the Alpha doing it, I did an engine for Ryan Lutz one time a few years ago when he was distributing Alpha, and I did an engine for free for him, and I opened up the crank timing and I drilled the backplate on it, because I knew Ryan back quite a few years ago. I don't remember when we used to have the RCX Fest. He came up when he was the Kyosho team manager, and he was like, if you said something about a modified engine, he was like, no, those are bad, but, and that was his experience that he had. But, but I told him, I'll do this engine for you, but I don't want Alpha to see this engine, and they ended up with one of the Dragon 3 or something. They ended up opening up the crank timing and did the drilled back plate at one time. So I was like, maybe they did see that one, you know, but. And Reds too, I don't know where they got the idea from or whatever, but it might not have been from one of mine, but you know, there's a couple companies that make those drilled back plates now too, or at least one of them stuff. So they're a little more common than they used to be, but Reds, I'm pretty sure they got it from me. You know, they had the fuel mileage edition engines, and it had a little aluminum insert in the crank. So basically, it had kind of a little carb inside the crank. Had a little insert in there, pressed in there. And I'm the only one I believe that did that. I used to do that for mileage. You know, I still can and stuff, but I don't do it as often. But
I was going to say the modified backplate seems to be lately a more common thing that you're seeing. Like you said, I know you are doing it. Reds is now doing it. AMR has been doing it for a little while as well, and it seems to be a common practice with, you know, more and more companies now looking for ways to modify engines, especially like I think when the Reds, when they put out that limited edition Scuderia, the green and black headed one, the very first limited edition one they put out, I know they put it in on that one and then highly modified that sleeve, and now they're doing it again on that new 721, which is supposed to be the same thing as the green and black headed one, but now they're supposed to be putting out a permanent version, which I guess is going back to the red and black colored, but now it's going to be, you know, for sale permanently.
Yeah, that we just talking about that. They putting it back on them. You know, I guess it was some marketing stuff. I don't know for sure myself, but it seemed like it was just a marketing thing to see how would the first run go.
How many people would want it?
Yeah.
And then that's what I understand. It was such a big hit that now they want to put it into production permanently. But Rex, I got another quick question for you. So earlier when you were talking about like, okay, so the modding that you do to gain top end or bottom end. So with modding with engines, I know a lot of guys have that question. When you mod an engine, let's say the guys that want, you know, a lot more top end. Let's say you have an engine that predominantly was designed to have really great bottom end, but was kind of lacking on the top end. So they take that engine and they send it to someone like you that mods it and says, hey, I want more top end out of this. It's fine on the bottom end. The mid range, it's so. But to me, it feels like it's lacking on the top end. So they send it to you and ask you, you know, can you get more top end out of this? Now, when you go and mod that engine to give it more top end, is that engine gonna sacrifice some of that mid or bottom that it was intentionally designed for?
Yeah, it most likely will lose. It'd be a little bit smoother on the bottom, but then gain on the top. It's kind of a trade-off. You can't. It's really difficult to just make it overall top to bottom more power. You know,
I guess that's kind of my question. No matter what mod you do on an engine, there's really no definitive way to say, I'm going to take an engine, no matter what brand it is, I'm going to mod it, and you're going to have great bottom, great mid, great top. I guess it kind of doesn't work that way. You're either going to get one or the other. Would that be safe to say?
Yeah, that's more safe to say. You know, there's a few things. We were just talking about the modified backplate. That's one instance where you're going to pick up some top end without sacrificing the bottom end. But for the most part, if you want more top end, you're going to have to move that exhaust port up, and then to move that exhaust port up, you're going to lose some bottom end. You know.
Now here's one other question I got, because I've heard a term a lot for a while, like, you know, you got your bashers, like you were saying earlier, that want that crazy horsepower right out of the gate. You know, they want as much as they can get out of, you know, whether it be the Novorossi Rex Legend 28.8s or the LRP ZR 32s. But like for the guys that are specifically racing, I hear some modders say that they can do what's the fuel mileage mod. Now, is there actually a mod that you can do on an engine that is gonna better the fuel mileage on an engine? And if so, can you tell us where would that mod be made on an engine to improve the fuel mileage, if there is such a thing?
Hold on one second. On your last question you just asked about if you could increase the bottom or top, it's you can, but it's not gonna be with the engine. It's gonna be more with, like, if you want, okay, you get a mod where the top end is, you want more top end, and it may take away from the bottom. You can, you also can play around with your clutch and your gearing to get that back. You know what I'm saying?
Right, I got that, but I was being specific, like, just not messing with the clutch, not messing with anything else. Just you take an engine that was predominantly designed for bottom end, and you want more top out of it. Because I've heard that a lot, that if you go in and mod an engine to give it more top end, you don't get the best of all three worlds, bottom, mid, and high. You're gonna sacrifice the others somewhere else, versus like you got an engine that is great up top, but now you want to give it some bottom end. Now you can, mess around with the clutches, to improve it and stuff. I was just trying to get, Rex's input on that, because I've heard a lot of different things, but I actually wanted to ask, an actual modder, their on that.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, you are making a sacrifice, and I think to prove a point, if you went and bought, there's some on-road engines that are $600-700, and go put it in and go try and run an off-road with it, you're probably gonna, it's not gonna come off the corner, because the on-road guys run slipper, they kind of basically slipping the clutch off the corners and stuff.
Right.
And, that's a $700 engine, and it's not going to have the bottom end. It's it's kind of the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Freak. Ask him again. My bad.
Well, on what I was asking you about, like a fuel mileage mod, is there such a thing? And where, if there is, where in the engine are you doing a mod to better the runtime on an engine?
I have. Is that going to
be the crank, the sleeve, the block?
There's a few things in it. I'm not going to say a certain modifier or whatever. I've seen that advertised like a fuel mileage mod, and I don't know what they're doing. A lot of times it might be just a combination. I'm not saying, it just, this combination of this timing and this, whatever. There's actually not that many guys, I think, out there that actually changed too much timing and stuff. But yeah, if they have a decent combination, it might get some better mileage. I've done some things in the past where I was talking about that Reds has that little aluminum insert inside the crank. So instead, it might reduce the internal diameter of the crank. I think on my site I got some different pictures of some different stuff that I played around with, and I've actually taken, instead of silicone fillet, I drill the crank out instead of silicone fillet, and I put a whole aluminum insert in there that's maybe more than a millimeter smaller, so the internal diameter of the crank is a millimeter smaller, and actually just use actually cut the crank window back open. So I just push a piece of aluminum in there, have it drilled out, and then I used a mill and milled that back. So instead of having a silicone fill, it's just aluminum in there, so it's light. But that does affect mileage, and it that lets a little bit less air in, a little bit. But whenever you have a smaller, and some engines do, vary in different crank internal diameters, and with a smaller internal crank diameter, it's gonna have a little bit more of a throttle feel to it. It might have less overall power, but it's gonna have a little more of a mid-range kind of a trigger, more of a little more direct trigger on the bottom end and mid. It's just gonna feel a little bit more connected there.
Yeah.
But and the back plate does help mileage, I believe, too. So there's a few different combinations you can make, but if it's an engine that the modifier is not familiar with, they're just guessing, and like I was I was telling Corey before, we found a combination on the Argus R8 that my son ran 2 or 3 years, and my son was, you know, top 3 or whatever at that time, you know, top 5, top 3, but we could go an extra 2 laps on everyone else for, you know, and so, you know, he got into, they were in a battle or whatever, and those guys pitted. He had 2 laps by himself to make clean laps and stuff, and it really paid off a few times. And then at the end, we just put in a splash of fuel instead of, you know, having to make sure it was a full and stuff at the end. So, yeah, but that was a combination of different, you know, with that Argus. I don't remember the exact, but it was modified, a little more crank timing. He might have had the insert in the crank at that time. I'm not sure, you know. Maybe the modified back plates, a few things like that, and it just happened to be a combination. But fuel mileage, I think, is mostly probably the biggest difference is the driver's trigger finger, you know. And
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago, before Adam Drake was getting, you know, he can go 13 minutes sometimes. I don't know if he does lately, but you know, when he's, and I talked to, I can't remember, the guy from TKO Bearings. I was talking to him one time when he lived in California and stuff, Peter Martin, and he said Drake spent like hours at the track trying different pipes, different carb restrictors, different, you know, he was there for hours trying to find a combination that worked for him, you know, to get mileage, and it paid off. He could go 3 minutes longer than everybody else, you know, and stuff, you know, do 10-minute stops and stuff. So, yeah, it's a combination, and the biggest thing being the guy's trigger finger coming off the corner. You don't have to squeeze it all the way, you know. So,
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, y'all, anybody else want to come in and ask a question? If you don't want to come in, just ask the question in the comments. I'll pop them up here on the screen, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
I guess going back to that too, I did. Adam Drake, just not too many, maybe 4 years ago, came up here. The series paid for him to come up, him and Rhonda to come up and race. And I talked to him a little bit about engines then. I didn't bother him too much, but, you know, he was saying too that you have you know, when he was Novorossi and stuff, they would send him different cranks and different things to play with. And, you know, an engine that has more power, let's say you opened up the crank time, you got more power, you're pulling the trigger less coming off the corner, so you're using less fuel. So you might have, you know, you might have to be a little more on top of it coming off the corner, but, you know, and not overpower the track. But he said too, a more powerful engine is better on mileage. But
yeah. Oh yeah, Rex. My boy Chauncey Mack says, what's your thoughts on the Go engines and the Atom SV engine?
I like the Go engines back in the day, and I did some research recently, and I don't know if they're still making engines and stuff.
Yeah.
There was a guy out in Washington importing them for a few years, and I don't think you really, you know, when they had that kind of gold, I try to remember the GX5R and stuff, and they were a good engine. I think, you know, they maybe weren't quite what the Alpha and Argus were, but I think they were a good engine. They played around with, we were talking about coatings earlier. They had kind of that gold coating that sometimes you see on the tools and stuff. They had the cranks coated with that.
Yeah. Because one of the guys that really got me into RC back in the day, you may know him, man. Guy named Alan Burton back in the day. He ran,
I've heard of him. He used to do engines and stuff, and
he ran. I think he ran some of your Arguses and some of your Go engines. You know what I'm saying? And he ran those. He put us on those Go engines. That was pretty good too back in the day too. Those Go engines they're real good.
Yeah, and the Atom is made by Go also, and there was a few different brands they had at one time. They had Atom, and there was a couple, and I think they actually made the engines for the Trackstar. You see, the Trackstar engines. But yeah, I think I didn't personally run the Atom, the SV. I believe that's the longer stroke one. I know a friend that ran he was a big, you know, OSVZB spec guy, and he tried the Atom. It's the short stroke one, the first they came out with, and he really liked it. Felt a lot like that old V spec, but I've never personally ran the SV, and I think when I did a review a couple years ago, because I get some stuff from Gene at Dialed Hobbies, and did a review on that longer stroke Atom, and I think the head shimming was wrong on it, and should have been addressed, but that's kind of been more common lately with engines lately. Even I think some of the reds come really, a little too much compression, I think, for what I like. But
yeah,
maybe at 20% fuel it might be fine. But yeah, I think the Atoms are decent.
Yeah. Okay. Floyd Brewer, he want to know what track and when I scale off-road racing have you been to in the Wisconsin area? Yeah. You remember?
I haven't been to many in Wisconsin. There's our Minnesota series went into Wisconsin a few years to Rick's Hobby Farm, and that's a pretty cool track, but that's just right across the border from the Twin Cities. So it's I know my son went over to a place down by the Dell somewhere. He went down there one year, but I always wanted to kind of do that Midwest series over there, but
yeah,
never did.
Okay. And Robert, he want to know, Mr. Rich, why would a racer want to have a modded motor but can't go straight down the straight? Some people just can't drive. Don't need a modded motor. He just want to know why somebody want a modded motor when they can't drive and can't hold it straight down the straightaway.
I said earlier I used to race stock car, and the guys that had cheater motors and stuff were all in the back. They think it's all power, and and it's not. You guys probably know too. It's not all. The 95% of it's driver. And you just need to get an engine to get you to the checkered. You don't have to have the most power. And sometimes you see that too as the guys go down the straightaway and they hang on to it as long as they can, and they break at the last minute and they go to the outside pipe. So they just lost what they gained down the straightaway. So I think I said earlier that most of these engines nowadays are good enough to race and win. And I think I think a lot of people think that all the pro drivers have modified engines, and I'd say not very many have modified engines.
Yeah.
They got the right combination, they got the right tuning. They're going faster around the corner, so they already got an advantage going down that straightaway. They're going 5 miles an hour faster when they hit the straightaway. So,
right.
Yeah, you got a good point, Robert. That's if you can't, it should be the last thing you should look at is getting a modified engine. You should be working on those skills, and I always think too, like if you're just learning and stuff, go with a cheaper engine because you're learning with the tuning too. Because you don't want to spend $500 on an engine and have dirt go through it because you didn't do the filter maintenance.
Right.
Start with a cheaper engine. At least you'll be out less when you ruin it.
Yeah. And Rick, while we talk about engines again, just describe to everybody a good engine like maintenance routine that you should do. You know what I'm saying? To keep your engines in good shape and clean as we can keep them. What's a good maintenance routine would you recommend for anybody?
I always took my engines apart a little bit sooner than most people would, but number one being the filter. Just replace that filter when it's dirty and being careful. I mean, just anytime you're messing around with the pipe or the air cleaner or anything, that you just make sure that you blow it off with the air hose first, before you take the filter off, so you're not dropping any dirt in there. And I see bashers are good for that, where they pull the plug out after running it every time and drop a after run oil in there, but they're probably getting dirt in there, you got to turn an engine upside down to pull the plug out so no dirt drops in the cylinder, and or blow it out first would be a good thing too. But yeah, I think if you're kind of new, it's kind of tough. Pulling it apart, any chance of getting dirt in there is probably number one. But I'd say the front bearing, replace that every at least 3 to 5 gallons. It depends on if you're running in grass or pavement, it's not going to get much dirt. But I've been there where that's really dusty and dirty conditions. 3 gallons probably is pushing it for a front bearing. So, and then you don't really need to have it pinched unless it's not idling or it doesn't feel tight. It doesn't with the plug out, it doesn't have to. You don't have to feel a pinch at the top. It just when you turn an engine over, it should have a good pop when it goes over the top.
Right.
With the plug in, it should just it should feel a good pop. And the old saying is to hold it by the flywheel, and the engine shouldn't drop down on its own. Which that's probably getting pretty weak if it's dropping on its own. But it should have some good resistance at the top and a good pop over the top. And as long as it's idling, it's probably good. But
okay, yeah, we appreciate that, man. Yeah, that's real good, man. And like I said, another thing is after run oil, is it necessary if you're running a good fuel? How do you feel about the after run oil, stuff like that?
I never did it after run oil because I always ran good fuels. I think most fuels nowadays, not all, but I think most fuels have some anti-corrosion in them, and some guys run them dry too. They'll pinch the fuel line and run them dry. I never did any of that. I just run it, and it might get a little bit of rust, but I think some of it might more come from the environment. If you're really, if you're living in an area by the ocean, or if you're, if it's always really humid and you keep your, car outside, it's probably more coming from that, but I think more people ruin engines trying to put after run in them than actually saved them,
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Johnson Mac, he want to know again, have you ever thought about having your own engine warmer? Because there's not many on the market, really. Have you ever thought about that?
I never thought about that. No, I do use them religiously. Even if it's 80 degrees outside and we're at the track, I still plug it in because it just, just when you hit the track for that first lap, it's nice and ready to go, and I think it's easier on your engine when you fire it up when it's warmed up. So no, I've never thought about making a heater. Yep. I guess the one I got now is just the cheap one on eBay for $30 or whatever they are. It seems to work okay.
I got you. Okay. But yeah, man, like I say, man, I'm not gonna keep you all night, bro. But like I said, everybody in here totally appreciate your time coming out and just talking with us and just enlightening us with, how to keep our engines running better, and just the whole process of modding and everything like that, man. Like I say, I totally appreciate the opportunity, and like I said, this is the main reason why I prefer you over any other model, because like I said, you're straight up dude, you're a good guy, number one. Number two, you don't mind putting your work out there, showing what you do. You don't mind doing reviews on engines, showing that you really are into the hobby and not just trying to take money or get gain from just doing something just to be doing it, but you really invested in the hobby by putting yourself out there and stuff. So, but
I got a quick question for him.
Go ahead.
Rex, I wanted to ask you, for those of us that wanted to acquire the 2 tools you made, one for putting in the throat of the carb and then for extracting the sleeve, how can we go about getting a set of them tools from you, purchasing a set from you?
In the video I did with it, I put a link to the eBay. I didn't want to just get emails flooding and stuff and have to deal with that, so I just threw it on eBay. But I didn't really say is if you're sending me an engine for rebuilds, or if you send me a piston and sleeve for resize, we're already doing something. you know, I can offer that quite a bit less. You know, if you just add that to whatever you're doing, that's probably the easiest way is, you know, hey, I'm sending you the piston sleeve for resize or an engine to rebuild and stuff. You know, can you throw in a toolkit for, you know, how much to throw it in? Because I got it on eBay for $20 and it seems like a lot of money, but eBay takes 10% of that, and then PayPal takes some of that. You know, so you're only making $10 on that $20 plus postage. You know,
why
so
I was asking, because I'm getting ready to send you, I think about 3 sleeves that I need to have resized. So I'd like to pick up a set of your tools when I send you them sleeves.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like I said,
yeah, like
anything.
I said before, I do kind of want to get some different size. Because once in a while, even with the tool on a stubborn sleeve, sometimes it'll kind of kick it away. You know, especially the exhaust ports. If the exhaust port's got a lot of angle to it, and that tool or a zip tie or whatever it will slide out of there really easy. And so I made like a little moon-shaped piece to go. You put the tool in and then drop the piece down in there so it can't kick out. But I don't. I have one for, you know, just the standard long stroke, but I didn't make the other sizes, and there's so many different sizes too. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, if I should just offer it as like an engine builder set or something with, you know, 6 different sizes of those or whatever. But yeah. So just hit me up when you send those sleeves. Just ask me, you know, and I'll
Definitely.
It's quite a bit cheaper than paying the $20, you know. So
we got one more question from Mr. Lil Chili. He's saying, what do you think about tuning with carb needles length to obtain different power bands and characteristics?
Yeah, when I did my tuning video, you know, a lot of people really appreciated that I talked about the long low speed needle, and I felt like, you know, a Nova Rossi back 10 years ago when they ran just a short needle, they just tuned so easy, you know, that your high speed basically isn't restricted at all by the low speed needle and stuff. So I kind of, I don't know, it's hard to find an engine nowadays with the short needle. There's a few, but it's kind of a little bit different. You still, probably number one thing you want to do is set idle gap no matter what carb you have. But, you know, like an OS would be like a 0.5 millimeter, and everything else is kind of closer to 7/10 of a millimeter, but or 30 thousandths is pretty general. But yeah, the long low speed needle, and I always felt that the Nova Rossis were kind of hard to tune with their long low speed needle. That and some of them come with quite a bit of compression. I thought adding a 4,000 shim actually was a little bit better too. But yeah, we ran a Fusion. No, was that a Fusion motor? Got it through Monty Houston there a few years ago, and we had trouble tuning it. You know, it always ran. It didn't flame out. You know, it wasn't that kind of thing. But just getting, you know, we'd turn that low speed needle a quarter turn, and it wasn't. You know, we'd move the needles, and it wasn't responding the way we thought then. You know, but I haven't ran Nova Rossi really since then, so I can't really say. You know, I'm not not really experienced with them, but yeah, it is a little bit different, and you just got to remember that the biggest thing with the long low speed needle is if you have your low speed, your idle gap set really small, and your low speed needles in the carb quite a bit, that can restrict the mid and top also, you know. So, but each engine manufacturer has a little bit different taper on there too, so it depends on the engine. But it is something to pay attention to. If you get if you get a little bit of a bog in the mid range, or even it kind of runs out of fuel in the top, sometimes it can be that low speed needle and not the high.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we had that discussion too in here, man. And we figured it out, but it seems like a different tuning process, tuning that long low speed needle, than just like you said, then tuning that short low speed needle. So, but yeah, man, like I say, bro, I totally appreciate this time that you gave us, man. And I think we had an awesome interview. I think everybody have enjoyed it, man. And like I said, I want to thank you again for coming on here and just talking with us, man, and just showing and sharing some of your knowledge. I appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Like I said, we might have to do it again, Rex, because it's some more stuff that people ain't saying right now. They probably later on think about. We'll do this again. I got some more stuff too myself I want to ask, but I ain't gonna wear you out tonight. We gonna get up again and do another one.
Yep, that's good. We can do it again sometime. It's no problem.
Okay, man. Like I said, man, I appreciate it, man. And yeah, I'm gonna end it right here. Like I said, bro, I appreciate you, and you'll be hearing from me again, Rex. I appreciate it, bro. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Okay.